Fans are the greatest people in the world.
Much entertainment return for your dollar.
This is no way to tell stories. This is not how to do comic books. This is not fun.
And if you don't like my politics, don't buy my book.
Well, I gotta tell you, without fans, the whole entertainment business would fade away.
Welcome to another Comic Talk. This guy is back in the house. That's right. James Meeley, Sequential Treasures, is back. Why is it great? Comic Talk, our last one of the year, folks. Can you believe it? We've gotten through 2024. We've talked about different things. James, it's so great to have you back with us, my friend. I appreciate all you do, man.
Glad to be here, my friend. I was like, I really enjoyed doing these. I was kind of upset that health reasons took me out for a while, but hey, I'm back in the pink. Time to get back on the horse and get this thing rolling.
Right,
It's all about showing people the good stuff.
Yeah, it's nothing's changed. It's still slim pickings when I even can talk about a new comic and say it's not bad, but I tend to be very hesitant because things don't have longevity. It's not like I can say something is good and I feel like when we're on issue 12 it's going to be good, or issue 25 it'll even be around. It's just not like that anymore. The industry is just different. I'm at the point now where my new take is, I think if I had to give any recommendation to the big two, just even if they just keep doing what they're doing, do your agenda stuff, it doesn't sell, fine, whatever it is. Why don't you just make miniseries? Just call them what they are. It's a 6-issue miniseries. It's a 5. Make different titles for them all. Don't just do that. It's so bad that even the Predator story makes no sense if you didn't read the last canceled book, because you don't have any reference of who this character is. And it's like, oh, it's technically their miniseries. They just don't call them like the old days. It would be like Predator Cold War or Predator Big Game. Now it's just we restart them. And I'm like, well, I don't understand what's happening. It wasn't even bad. It was like if they could just make that little tweak, many of us would be a lot more, I think, tolerant of the bad stuff, because we're like, oh, it's crap. It's just another crappy 5-issue miniseries. Fine. All right. Well, this one's good for 5 issues or what. So,
well, yeah, and you can't even rely on the fact of, like, if you get a good issue, that next month's going to be a good issue. Oh, it's the same team doing issue 1 that did issue is going to do issue 2. Okay, it's going to be good. If issue 1 will be fine, then you read issue 2, it's like, oh, it was totally awful. You can't even be consistent issue to issue.
Yeah, and the writing is different than what you and I are used to. Like, so for me, Incredible Hulk is probably the only Marvel comic that I actually am like, I'm actually like, okay, it's going to drop this week, I'm going to read it. But it's like issue 2, I was ticked off because there's no Hulk in my Hulk comic book. It was all set up because it's like, it's written to be like a graphic novel, right? This is 2 pages, this is 2 stars, this is 3. It's like, it makes my head hurt, because I'm like, if I had bought this, I would be so mad there's no Hulk in my Hulk comic book. But I know in the grand scheme of this being in a trade paperback at some point, no one's going to care. But I'm like, no. But that's not why we're here. We're here to talk about some good stuff. And I'm going to switch it up this week, folks. I'm switching it up on James. We're going out with something completely different. And I'm just great to have him back with us and hanging out. So my issue is from my childhood, man. I am Avengers was kind of a gateway thing for me on the Marvel side. I'm very sort of like, I don't know. I'm kind of a big fan of Avengers in some ways. In other ways, it just has to be done a certain way for it to work. And this is kind of an illustration of what that is. We talk about standalone issues. There's one, actually, I didn't have the exact number. I think it's just a few issues later. And what they did was in 181, the government got involved and they said, "Oh, you only have like 7 Avengers," and they picked their lineup, and they actually chose Falcon to be part of that lineup for race reasons. So again, social justice back then. I know it didn't occur to us that that's what was happening, but that's what it was. It was sort of like an affirmative action type thing, basically, right? So they've got other battles and other things that are happening. So the group has really never actually coalesced and actually been together. And this is the issue where Hawkeye, who's been left out in the cold, he's left off the team. He's going to have a little solo adventure. I like the fact that during this Avengers run, they would have these big events where they would all fight side by side. They might even fight a big bad, or they would fight something just kind of unorthodox. But then they would have like an issue where Wasp saves the day, or Hawkeye saves the day, or Falcon saves the day. Like it was very, very well thought out to give everyone some spotlight, if you will.
Yeah.
So,
To sort of give the, let's say, the B listers a little more attention, so that you get to know them, because you've got Thor, you got Iron Man, you got Cap. They're just going to kind of overpower everybody else, because that's who you're going to be interested in. So we get a little spotlight to these lesser characters to build them up, and then try to maybe create some new characters that people feel that way about.
yeah, and as a kid, I mean, it was cool to have a bow and arrow guy, but you're kind of like, well, next to Thor or even Vision and Miss Marvel, but definitely Thor and Vision, it's like, well, he's so not powerful. It's like, what do we have him for? You know what I mean? So as a kid, I was already in love with each one of them because they'd given me a book like this to have him save the day. So this actually also showcases the complexity of storytelling. So even though this is like, it's squeezed into this bigger story, you get footnotes. So here you'll see Thor, he's leaving the mansion saying farewell to Iron Man. There's a little asterisk here that talks about the battle they had just had in the annual 9. And then he's completely oblivious to paying Falcon anytime. But you can see here recent issues of Thor's own magazine. And then there's a few issues later, you're going to see another reference here to Marvel Premiere. Then a little bit later, we're going to see another reference here coming up with Defenders 76, 77. Now, I bring that up because as a kid, and I don't know, James, you can speak to this too. As a kid, I was all about like, okay, well, now I got to go find those books.
Yes.
I got to go, what do you mean what happened?
I loved the footnotes to give you the reference to like, if you want to know more about this little bit here, go out and check out this book. I always enjoyed those. Those were always a lot of fun, and it definitely helped me as a reader. Getting, especially at the start where it's like I didn't know where to begin. Here are these characters. This stuff is happening. What's going on? Oh, this will help fill me what's going on. Let me go find those books. And yeah, definitely love that stuff. It's one of the things I miss in the comics today. Modern stuff, they don't do that anymore. Just another great thing that they used to do that's fallen to the wayside, it seems.
Yeah, it's just beautiful art. Beautiful art. John Byrne is just, it's crazy. Just the characters are just so ingrained in my mind of what they look like, what they should look like, and all of that. This is part of the reason, guys, why I'm such a stickler on being the way I am, because this is what I grew up on.
Well, that Thor page you're just showing, the one where he flies by the Falcon and almost knocks him out, not even paying attention. Yeah. That's kind of how, like I said, like that's what these issues that you're talking about here were about. Like you had a lesser character, and like here's Thor, he's the big guy. That's who you're paying attention to. You're not paying attention to these small guys in the stories. And then so let's do a story to focus on one of these small guys, actually give them some attention so they don't end up just like this.
Right. So basically that's what's happening. Falcon is finally coming to the mansion for the first time. He's been brought in for diversity's sake. So he's there and he's excited, but he's also kind of like not quite sure what the lay of the land is. Obviously they had a big battle recently. So they have all these other characters that are there, Yellow Jacket and Wonder Man. They're not really part of the team right now, things like that. And then they go through and they're going to give him his ID card, right? So he basically has this eye chart, and it's like, no, the retinal patterns confirmed, identity, Falcon, return to active Avenger status. And it's like, that's it? I don't even have a swear. Nope, that's it. And he kind of jokes, and then he's trying to talk to Hawkeye because Hawkeye, of course, was left out in the cold. He threw a tantrum at the time. He's been part of the battles here recently, but now his time is up, and it's, I don't know about you. This was one of my pet peeves with the way the movies were handled. Not that I hated Jeremy Renner or anything like that. I just thought this element of Clint Barton was completely lost in the movies. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I just know that I had this version of Hawkeye as a kid, and I didn't get that in the movie version. He's more like the family man. He's more subtle, things like that.
I think what they did is the guy in the movies is more like the Hawkeye of the West Coast Avengers, the one where he's in charge, and so he's trying to be more serious. He's trying to be more together. He's trying not to be so quick to temper. He's trying not to be the jerk all the time, because he's like, I'm the leader. I have to step up, and that's how he was presented in the West Coast Avengers book when that happened. And I think this is before that. So that's correct. This is when Hawkeye's still a bit of like almost like the rookie almost in a way, where he's like just got that young punk thing going on, where he's like a little testy, a little flippant a lot of the time on things, and that's how he was in the early days. But then, like I said, when he became leader of the West Coast team, that all changed, and that's the Hawkeye I think we saw like in the films and the TV show and that kind of stuff. That guy.
Yeah, he's definitely a hothead in this book. So
Yes.
So anyway, all of this early stuff is just the backstory of what's going on in this very complex story, and with different characters and things like that. So, like I said, if you don't know much about Yellow Jacket and Wonder Man and all that, this book has a little bit of all that, as well as this sort of drama with the government controlling things, which is again something that the movies didn't get into too much, other than like Civil War. But here, it's like we finally got the team together. We're controlling the team. We're picking the team, blah, blah, blah. And then it's like, now we can just reinstate Scarlet Witch, whatever. And she's like, no, I want a leave of absence. And everyone's like, what? And then it's like, he's mad because like, you got to get your act together, you superheroes. Basically, it's that kind of thing. Poor Scarlet Witch doesn't even know what she's walked in on, right? So,
well, Henry Gyrich was always like, just the guy you love to hate. He's that typical smarmy political bureaucrat. That it's like every time you see him, you just want to punch him in his face.
Yeah, he's this issue just is definitely going to set up even more of that for sure. But basically, this is a story about Hawkeye, and you basically end up with this little side drama, and he goes back to his little apartment. It's a complete mess. You have to kind of look little subtleties of what Byrne does here. I think this is supposed to be a picture of Falcon on the wall that he's throwing darts at, and he has a picture of Wanda as Scarlet Witch above his bed. So it's just little subtleties and nuances I thought were actually kind of interesting. He's looking for, like, I guess this is like standby, retainer, Avenger, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so he has to go get a job. So he's looking for the security job. It's like basically like hired immediately, basically.
Well, this is an interesting aspect because it's not something you think about, like, very much. Like, we all know superheroes have their private lives and stuff, like, or guys like Spider-Man, he's got his day job, but you never think about, like, if you were a superhero full time and then all of a sudden you weren't needed, what would you do? You have all these skills, you have all these abilities or whatever, and you have no outlet for them. What do you do? And so this is kind of an interesting aspect to say, like, here's a superhero, because again, he doesn't have any actual powers.
Yep.
But here's a superhero, and yet there's no need for his superheroing. What do you do? How do you survive?
Yep. And I know you already kind of, you kind of spoiled the direction that they're ultimately going to go with that, because they are going to create a West Coast Avengers, and he's the perfect candidate to go over there. He has a lot of expertise. He's worked with the Avengers. He knows them all very well. So it just, it works really well for everybody. So that kind of stuff is what makes this almost so seamless in how well it transitions from issue and stories back together. So you end up with this basically like a little quick introduction to this company called Crosstech, whatever. It's high security type stuff. And he's already inside with his feet up on the desk, sitting back like, nobody can break in here. Absolutely nobody, question mark. Yep. Hello, dear. You know what I mean? He starts reaching for the alarm, and he gets in with one of the arrows, and so this back and forth. Look, I'm a way better option for security around here than anybody else. And he's like, it's a gushy job. Look at him reading the magazine. It's got like a fold out. Like, oh, okay. So what a cushy job. A pad on the west side, my own coffee cup. This place makes Stark International look like Toys R Us. So finally, there's an alarm that goes off, and he has to go into battle. There's a big, someone broke in. They melted through the ceiling, basically. And there's a shadow. He thinks Falcon, right? Because he has Falcon on the brain. I thought this was actually in this reread. This isn't something I would have picked up on as a kid, but as an adult rereading this, it shows the mental obsession that this person has, because he's really blaming Falcon, even though it's the government that chose Falcon over him to make this team. But he has an issue and a vendetta with Falcon. So his first thought, which I thought was a brilliant little line to put in there. Anyway, no, it's not. It's Deathbird. And you have this just little back and forth battle where she's holding her own. She gets the upper hand a couple times. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. And then ultimately, he finds a way to overcome. And then he nabs her at the last second. He's got her. And then, of course, to make it kind of fun as a kid, what does he do? He lays a big old smackaroo on her. He gives her a big kiss right here. So totally. And then she's like throwing down.
I love the reaction. That's
Yeah. I can't say it hasn't been fun, Deathbird, but my date book's all filled up for a while, so don't call me. I'll call you. It's like he's so happy and different now than what he was earlier. So, and then it just kind of concludes with
more. A little bit of a rogue. You know, he's not like he's not straight laced. He's more of a roguish character.
Yeah. Then it cuts right back to the Henry Gyrick Avengers drama about who can do what when, that kind of thing. So, just a little bit different type of book. Like I said, there's one. It's a couple issues later with the Wasp, where she's the one saving the day in this adventure and those kinds of things. So, what I mean by this is, like, there are some expensive ones in there. I think 181 is pretty pricey. There's a couple before this that are some early, like, Quicksilver, Scarlet Witch backstory issues, and then there's like the first appearance of Taxmaster is in this sort of era.
Yeah,
so you've got like 20, 30 issues there, though, where it's a lot of fun stuff. And I'm just so blessed to reminisce about that was what was on the shelves when I was a kid. You know what I mean? Going to the grocery store, to 7-Elevens, the Magic, it was one of them was called Magic Market, you know, that kind of thing. That was what I was able to get for Avengers, because it took me down the rabbit hole, like you were saying. Okay, well, now I want to read Defenders. Well, who's in Defenders? I got Hulk. All right, well, wait, what do you mean this is in this annual? I don't have that annual. How do I get that annual? What do you mean this Thor comic book? You know, Nan, can I get this Thor comic book? She's like, okay, whatever. You know what I mean? She didn't care, but it was like, it was always more. That marketing has been lost, and it is sort of a fun element, folks. If you want to go down that rabbit hole, especially if any of you are into digital, it won't even cost you anything. You can just ping around and try out some different things, find things you like, and then go out and buy them up. Because that's what I think you should do, is spend your money on all the stuff that you want, all the stuff that's good. Let them know there's a difference. I'm not saying that everything is bad. I'm just saying that this era is great. And if you can get your toe in and enjoy it, I'm telling you what, you're going to have a good time. So.
Well, and the thing I noticed about it is like I said, there are some like heavier type elements. Like you said, it does kind of touch on the social justice because of the Falcon being the diversity hire, the like that. And then you got, Hawkeye looking for work, something you wouldn't think about for superheroes, like, oh, when they're out of superhero, and what do? Some serious stuff is in there. But yet when you saw the battle, it was very lighthearted. I mean, he's cracking jokes, and he's doing death-defying actions, and it's just a lot of fun. And that's the main thing. Is I saw that as just a very fun issue, like in between, like the storms. Like you had the previous few issues. I think it had a Quicksilver and not Quicksilver. Yeah, it was Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch story. It was like a big deal, kind of their origins and stuff. And then and then after this issue, you start the march towards issue 200 with all that stuff that goes on. So like this is kind of like this little quiet issue that's right in between. It's just pure fun. It's we're not trying to make any big deals. We're not trying to create an event. We're not trying to change the worlds or change. It's just here's these great characters, this rich history, and let's have a little bit of fun with them. And that's what that issue was. And that's, again, you don't really see that very much anymore.
Yeah, this is a nice little run too, where you've got basically over the course of like 2 years, you do have some moments, but in between those, they fight, the Grey Ariel for a minute. They fight these creatures that have been exposed. They take on the personality of all these different elements. So each one of them have different positive and negatives on why they can be effective there. And Falcon gets to save, what his role will be in all that, right? The Wasp and this fire thing. So this is what the Avengers was for me. Now, again, that isn't like saying this is the best Avengers ever, because it took me down the rabbit hole, and I was going all the way back to the beginning. I was all the way back to Stan. I was all, it was all the way. But it gave me a good chance to understand what some of the different characters were and the relationships and things like that. So that's why I love it. So,
well, it's funny you brought up this issue because, again, I've read many of the Avengers books way back. One of my favorite runs, which is probably most people's least favorite, is like from issue 16 to 28, which is when it was just Cap, Hawkeye, Scarlet Witch, and Quicksilver. They were the Avengers. There was like no like super strong guy. There was no Thor. There was no Iron Man.
Hulk or Thor.
There's no Hulk. There's nobody like that on the team. It's just these people who like have special abilities, but like Quicksilver has speed, and that's all he's got. Hawkeye has his bows and arrows. That's all he's got. Scarlet Witch has her magic, and and then you got Cap with his shield, and but there's nobody there who's like what you would call truly like super powered. There's nobody. There's nobody like that on the team. And I like that run because it shows you, it shows that, you don't need superpowers to be a superhero. And also because it was just to see people who were closer to a normal than you normally would expect. Like I said, when you look at the original Avengers, superpower, you got Ant-Man, Giant Man, you've got Thor, you've got Iron Man, just all these super powerful characters coming together. And yet in this run, it's a much smaller team and not nearly as like high powered, and yet they still had some great stories in there, and they did a lot of great work. And like that's where we get this whole thing with Hawkeye is it's where it all starts is from that. He came in as the brash hothead, and like I said, as time went on, he slowly evolved. Yeah, see, there it is right there, the number 16 with the new lineup. And you look at all these heroes in the background. You see there's Iron Man, and there's all these other, and just some great stuff.
It's just the 4 of them. Just
the 4 of them against something who's like probably like as strong as the Hulk. You see, and that's kind of what they're saying. The Minotaur, and they're showing the Hulk in the background. Like, man, you need the Hulk to fight somebody like this, and all we got are these guys.
This was actually a sweet spot for me, to be honest, because it was pretty early in college. I was able to get a copy of 16 that I pulled up, and 19, which is coming up. So I had those, But yeah, they had these great little adventures. It was a lot of fun. It was interesting. Here's a swordsman issue.
Yep.
God, boy, my copy was a lot better than this one that they scanned in. Well, my copy was beautiful. That was actually one of my regrets, getting rid of that book. Ooh, wish you could undo that one. But yeah, this is a good run. Good fun stuff. Here's the Swordsman Part 2 story, basically. Oh, they scan the ads in. Look at that, $12.95 fishing rod. You don't always get the ads scanned in. It depends on the app.
Here's a great one. The original Power Man, who would later become the second Goliath, the villain Goliath.
Yep. Power Man comes in. You two can gain 50 pounds of muscle right here.
I wonder if they kind of, since they knew he was going to be a guy who's super strong, like, hey, let's have an ad about strength. See, because there it is, the second issue, and it's got the same ad. That's hilarious.
Yep. Yeah, it's part 2 of the story. Yep. Where we get to...
and there's Kang.
We got our Kang reference. I've tried to reread the Kang stuff because of the stuff they've done with the cinema, and I still don't like Kang. To me,
he was never an A-list villain. He's definitely B or C list villain. I mean, he's not like the kind of guy you would expect. He's not Dr. Doom. He's not
It never
Thanos.
Works out. Here's the thing about Kang. They want it both ways. They want to play him up as like a super genius, but almost every time he's there and he's battling Fantastic Four or Avengers or whatever, it's always some silly, incompetent thing is why he loses. It's never some real complex thing he didn't think about. It's some goofy, simple thing, tripping over your own feet kind of thing. And it just...
Yeah, they make him as the kind of guy where like he thinks he's got all these big thoughts and he's focused on all these big things, and yet the little thing that like is obvious, like you should have seen this coming, and that's what trips him up.
Every time. So, all right, let's get to James's book here real quick.
I went a little bit of a different route with Pops. I figured since this is the holiday season, and you can see right here I'm dressed for the holiday, wearing my ugly Christmas sweater. It doesn't get uglier than that.
Yeah.
And so in honor of that, it's also the season of sentiment. Because you get very sentimental during the holiday season, and so I thought I should do a story that is highly sentimental, and so I decided to go with this from the 1983 series, The Thing, when he had his own book. His own separate book from the FF, and this is issue number 2. With the cover here is by Ron Wilson and Joe Sinnott, and it's, if you look at that cover, I like how they laid it out, where you have, because this is a story of his past, something that's happened in the past is going to come to relevance into the present now, and I like how they show his face all in shadow, it's all silhouetted, and then yet you got all these images over top of it, like this is what he's thinking about. I like the way they showed him thinking, without actually, like thought bubbles or anything like that. It's just the images to like lay out like what you're going to see. He's thinking back on the past, and I think that was a very well done way to present that cover and to present the story that you're about to see without actually giving everything away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. For Beauty Passed Away, you can see just if you're not familiar, again, this is John Byrne. Work here with Ron Wilson art.
Yep, we got Wilson pencils, wow. And then the story and inks are by Byrne. So again, another connection pops by accident. You and I got together. You had Byrne at pencils. I have him as inks and writer. So, and here's a scene he's cleaning up after. There it is. There's your little footnote right there.
Mm-hmm. Back to Avengers.
He's cleaning up in the wake of issue 256 of the Fantastic Four, where they fought Annihilus, and he's just like going over like how much this stuff has happened. And if we get right here, I'll just get some of the dialogue here for you. He goes, "You wouldn't even think Reed could cram this much junk on the floor. It was strange battle, to be sure. For though the fate of nothing less than the universes hung in the balance, there actually was no actual physical confrontation. Of course, I guess I really didn't take up as much space as there was before, and he's just talking about like the whole thing of how the whole battle went down. He finds the mask of Annihilus and goes, I never knew this ugly kisser of his was a mask. I always thought it's really the way he looked. Now, and this is foreshadowing. This is foreshadowing what's to come. So pay attention to what he says there, because it's very important. So as it goes along, he finishes cleaning up, and then he heads out because he's going to go to the hospital because Alicia Masters' girlfriend and Franklin Richards had been injured when Annihilus attacked, and so he's going to go to the hospital to see them, and he runs into the classic Marvel character Willie Lumpkin, which I think is like almost like a Stan Lee self-insert in a way.
It's like a Stan Lee cameo right there.
Yeah,
it's lumpy.
And I just love this here where he's complaining about being a mailman, and he goes, "You're breaking my heart, Willie. If I told you, if you're going to keep this route, you can't keep complaining about having to deliver our tons of fan mail." And he goes, I know. I asked for a transfer, but all they offered me was a route with Richard Nixon's condo. And I swear some of those packages ticked. I just say, again, nice little comical reference to the fact that everyone hated Richard Nixon at the time. And so it's just nice little touch. And then you can see here, the Thing gets this letter, but he hasn't got time. I got to go. So he just stuffs it in his pocket and he heads out. And on the way over to the hospital, he goes and he reads it. You see, he opens up and he reads it here, and he goes, wonder what this is. Got a California postmark, but I ain't had contact with nobody from out there since we moved our headquarters from Central City to New York. Who in the world? And then, he gets the shock, and just as he reaches the hospital, you can see here, it says, his thoughts trail away to nothing. This awkward scrawled handwriting sears across his heart, his soul. It is as if an icy hand has reached out from the long closed grave to touch every fiber of his being. So like this is a letter. Whatever's in this letter, it's big time. It's reached him to a place that he thought he didn't even think about anymore, and it's got him all shook up. So he goes into the hospital, and he has a brief moment with Reed talking to him about Franklin, and saying, the doctor comes in saying, the next 24 hours are going to be critical. He's stable right now, but we're going to have to wait to see what happens in the next 24 hours. So after that, Ben heads out and he goes to see Alicia. And he at first he almost walks away because he's afraid, that he's going to, bother her. So like she's there resting, he's not sure how she's feeling, so he goes to leave, and then she calls him back, and he returns to her. And then that's when we get this great scene here, where he tells her, he goes, I'm worried about you, baby. I mean, I know nothing the doctors say you're okay, but when I see you all bandaged up like this, I know Annihilus did a real number on you and Franklin. He goes, don't talk about it, Ben, please. And then she reaches out to him, and you can see, tell me what it is that's bothering you. Don't deny it. I know you too well. Even behind those craggy features, I can tell you're troubled, deeply troubled. And then he tells him, that he got this letter, and it's something. He goes, it's real old. It's a real old nothing, but it cuts real deep. You see, babe, there's something I never told you about. And then he goes into the story of his past, and it's during his days in college. And you can see right here he is with Reed. You can see they're both very young. And, it just goes into like the relationship that him and Reed had in college, how they became best friends. And so here he is forcing Reed to leave the test tube to go out and have some fun. And here we meet this girl, named Lynn Chambers. And this is his squeeze in college. And you can see here she's a beautiful girl. She's having some fun. She's laughs with them and stuff. Everything. It's a great little moment. Great like the classic moments you would have in college. Like the kind of moment you always want to remember. So then time goes on. It says here 2 weeks later she shows up, and it's during the big game, and she sees Ben before he heads out, and he's got to talk to her, and he goes, "It's not another guy, Ellen. Tell me you ain't found another guy." And she goes, "No, Ben, it's nothing like that. Nothing like that. Nothing that simple. "Oh, Ben, I love you. I'll always love you. No matter what happens, you have to know that, don't you? Tell me you believe it. Tell me you believe it." And she's like, "Sure." But he goes, "Don't say anything else, Ben. Don't ask anything. Pretend I wasn't even here. Pretend I wasn't never here, never in all your life at all." And then she just walks away. She doesn't tell him why. She had something to tell him, but she didn't tell him what it was. And she's walking away. And so this weighs on him the entire time. And so, of course, as you can see here, she has a moment with Reed, and she runs by, and Reed's like wondering what's going on, and so the game goes on, and Grimm sees Reed out in the audience, but he doesn't see her where she would always sit next to him, because he says that Reed says that seat is empty next to him, and it bothers Grimm, and so he ends up blowing the big game. And so he gets a little chewing out from the coach. He has a typical Ben Grimm reaction with a little bit of anger, the classic thing we come to expect. And then, Reed defends him, saying, "I'll talk to him, coach." And then he tells him, he goes, "There's not a whole lot to say, pal. I made a dang fool of myself, and thinking all alone up here, there's only one reason for it that I've been able to come up with." He goes, "Alin, yes. You love her, don't you? Why don't you tell her?" He goes, "You think that's the cure-all? You think that's the answer? The cure-all? Okay, big brain. If I can find her, I'll tell her. I'll tell her more than that." And so then he ends up tracking her down, and they had this great moment where he's like, talking to her about, how much she means to him, how much, that their time together is. You see this great scene where they're in the park, and you see he carved their names into a tree there. And, he goes, "Remember how it all started right here? With these initials on this tree, with this ring? It was my ma's ring, Alin. I want you to have it now." And I don't even know what to say, and that's when he hits her. He goes, "It's simple enough, Alin. I'm asking you to marry me." And then comes the heartbreak. And, "Oh, Ben, I can't. I want to, but I can't. I don't want to hurt you." "Then don't say no, Alin. That's the only thing you can do that will hurt me now." And he goes, "No, Ben. No, it isn't. I have my career, Ben. I want to go to Hollywood to be a star. And if I marry you, I might neglect you. You might get lost in the shuffle, my darling. And I couldn't bear that. Goodbye, Ben. Don't come after me this time." See, and she walks away, and then you see his reaction. Again, the Ben Grimm, just, the anger, the frustration. And so we get back to him and Alicia. And there's just this great scene here. It goes, "They have loved, these two, as few others in all history have loved. A pure love, a love born of mutual needs and caring. And in the silence, the monster who was once Ben Grimm wonders if the words unspoken all these years should have been left so. He is a man who has marched uncaring into the hungry jaws of death, who has seen wonders and terrors beyond the human mind's ability to fully comprehend. But in this silence, he is afraid." And just that shot at his face, even being made of stone, you can still feel the emotion in that look he has. And then, Alicia's thinking that he's saying he wants to go be with Alin now. It's like, "I got this letter. She's a woman from my past, a past love." And she's like, "Are you asking me to let you go? Because we never had a vow. We never said that we were going to be together forever." And he tells her, no, that's not what it is at all. His thing is he's not afraid of that. What he's bothered by is that she's from the past. And if he sees her now, she will see what he has become. See, right now in his mind, she still remembers Ben Grimm, the man. And if she sees him now, she'll always remember the monster, the thing. And that's what he's afraid of. See, and now I'm a monster. And I guess I'm scared. Man, see, it's even choking me up, this story. It's just so wrought with emotion and sentiment in here. He loves his current girl, but this past has come back to haunt him in a way, and he doesn't want to see it, but he knows he has to. And so he decides, we're going to do it. I'm going to go, I'm going to see her. And so he leaves her, and then a little while later, we get back to the Baxter building, and he's pacing around, worried, concerned. He goes, maybe she ain't even coming. And then go, "Oh, the bell." And he goes, "All right." You go, all right, pal, get it together. Deep breath, wait for it. And then when she shows up, this is what he sees. She was supposed to be one of the most beautiful stars, as Alicia said, in the world. And yet here she is now. and we
Yeah.
learned she's had a stroke,
Yeah.
and she's partially recovered from it. But the doctor says her face will never be the same. Man, this is sad. And he goes, and so she came. Sorry, man. It's just like I said. It's just this is a really emotional one for me. She came to see him not because of wanting to rekindle anything, but because she wants to know how he lives with it.
Mm-hmm. How do you live with having some sort of what society would deem
Exactly.
something off-putting, if you will?
Yeah, like how do you deal with being a monster? Because that's how she sees herself now. As I'm not beautiful. I'm a monster, and I'm just getting used to this. But you've been dealing with this for a while. How do you do it? How do you deal with this thing every day? And there it is right there in the end with the embrace.
Yeah.
You thought the belly drop was when he explained to Alicia that he was afraid to see her because it would ruin her view of him. But that wasn't it at all. It was this. This was
all
the real belly drop.
Right.
Yeah,
all the anxiety he's having of she's about to show up. Wait for it. It opens. Hello, Ben. It's been a long time. Alin.
Yep.
And then it's like, oh, wait. It's because everyone's expectations have all turned around, and then there's a hug.
Exactly.
It's like she just didn't know what to do, and she went to somebody she felt like at least could understand.
Byrne masterfully done this. He spent the whole issue setting you up thinking he's concerned. It's his anxiety that's the problem. He's scared to see her. He's scared of what she'll think of him now. He's scared of ruining what she used to see him as, ruining that image she had of him. This is all his anxiety throughout the whole issue. And we think that's what it's going to be. And in the end, it's the total flip around. No, it's not about him at all. It's about her.
Well, and the reality is, and again, I'll get a little preacher hat on everybody for a minute, though, because this is kind of the beauty of when people are really too hard on themselves about our shortcomings, our own problems, our own illnesses, or whatever. I'm like, one of the biggest things that you can now do is you can now relate to someone who's in that similar situation or that similar path that I could not relate to. That's just a compare and contrast. So in this situation, Aelin feels very alone and isolated. She feels like a freak. She's probably been shunned and distanced by most of the people that were in her Hollywood peer circles. And someone like Ben from her childhood or her youth, he's adapted to being this freak, this monster.
Yes.
And he can relate to her in a way that most people can't relate to. And she needed to at least have that. She needed to have that moment, and Byrne does that. And this is the brilliance of him as a storyteller in this era. This is why comic books are not... People get the stigma, comic books are for kids, and it's all about heights and whatever. And there's no fighting in this issue, guys. Notice There was no superhero, supervillain fighting. This is a social drama, a human emotional story, things like that. So, great choice.
It's all about the human connections and the human interactions between people. Yeah, and again, this is the kind of thing I'm talking about. When we say we want to have the good stuff, this is a story that anybody can relate to. If you had someone in your life who has suffered like that, or just you yourself, like even with Ben's trauma that he had, where he was afraid of seeing somebody from the past because of how they would see them now, and all these are all things that we all can understand because we've all either known someone or have had it ourselves, and so it touches you in a way that it transcends just a story. And it's masterful the way Byrne did this, like I said. And this is what the modern guys don't get right so much. They spend so much time trying to force a message in. You got to think this, you got to believe this, you got to think like I do on this subject. And they don't understand that you don't have to do that. You can just tell a great story with great characters like this, and just tell a story from the heart that people can empathize with. And that's what this story is. This story is just truly about a story about empathy, and that's they spend so much time trying to force you to feel empathetic now, and instead of just telling a great story and letting the empathy come naturally from a person. And that's the difference between great storytelling and, say, propaganda. And that's the difference between this stuff here and the stuff that we're doing today. And that's why I wanted to spotlight such a great issue, to show you that this can be done. You can tell great stories people can have empathy for without having to shove a message down their throat to do it.
Well, and just, because the message is pretty intense, but it's done in a way that everyone can relate to some version of this, right? So everyone is a monster in our own minds. We're our own worst enemies looking in that mirror, right? So
Yes.
whatever our shortcomings are, we see all those blemishes and we think everyone else sees them as well or sees us differently. And most people have no clue to what you're talking about. As I joke, and I say it increasingly now because it really has clicked with me, is we're extras in everyone else's movie. Like we're,
Yes.
you know what I mean? It's like we're just not as important as we think we are, and it's usually our own subconscious that makes that a negative. This book showcases that tremendously through the Thing and his relationship with Alicia. And I'll say this too, because we didn't really touch on it too, how respectful it is for Thing to do that with his girlfriend. Right. So,
Yes.
yeah, there's no ring on her finger, which is what her argument was. Right. She's like, you don't owe this to me. You don't have a ring on my finger. Right. But he's treating her with such a chivalrous way of respect and dignity. Look, I'm going to go off and talk to some strange girl that you don't know. That's not the right thing to do. That is a very proper thing that we should be teaching culturally, because it would help with a lot of relationship tensions and struggles that don't need to be there. And it's because of this kind of stuff. So it's a subtle messaging that was there in that story that probably wasn't something a lot of people would have picked up on, but I thought was also very interesting.
See, and again, there it is. You just used the proper word there, Pops. Subtlety. Mm-hmm. That's why this story works so well, and that's why the messages it gets across, of that, you said, the isolation and wanting to have empathy for someone who's in a similar situation, the respect shown from one person to another in a situation that's difficult, that kind of thing. It's all put across very subtly, and that's why it works. If they were to try to do this today, they'd force feed it to you, and it just wouldn't come off the same.
Yeah, it's good stuff. It's good stuff. Well, folks, that's what we do. The links are in the description, not only to connect with this guy. Sorry, I switched sides. Switch with this guy. Make sure you have that. Make sure you're connected to his channel. Find out some of the stuff that's going on there. Go back through those libraries of different videos that he's done, different streams that he's done. He's been on with Aaron, all sorts, Aaron Lepresti, all sorts of stuff. And in my description, you also see a playlist there as well for some of the conversations that we've had and things like that. So if you like this type of stuff, you get other recommendations from us. If you have recommendations, put them in the comments. We'd love to hear from you as well. We enjoy that. That's part of what we do this for, is to have that time with kindred spirits. And James, you are indeed my brother in this, for sure.
Just so everyone knows, if you go and subscribe to my channel, please do. And if you do, right at the very top, I have a playlist of all the past episodes of Why It's Great. So, if you missed any of these before and you don't want to have to dig through Pop's channel to find them, they're all right there, nicely, neatly organized for you. So they're right there. You can check out the past ones we've done and enjoy more great stuff. And again, since the holiday season, you want to buy some gifts maybe, or maybe you want some gifts of something from somebody. These kind of books also make great gifts. And again, just like with mine and Pop's, both these books, neither of them very expensive. They're very economically affordable, and it shouldn't cost you an arm and a leg to get them. And again, just great stories, great art. Just exactly what you need and what you want in a great comic book artistry.
Well, thank you, my brother. Thank you so much for hanging out.
Glad to be here, folks, my friend.
It's just great to be here. It's great to do this, folks. Thank you so much. Hope you've had a good holiday and a good time as we head into the new year. And then we look forward to doing this regularly in 2024 and reset the count. Our next one will be, in 24. So thanks to my brother for doing this. You guys take care. Be blessed. Until next time, I am Pops.
Now bring it down hard. Someday, put it together.
What are you doing?
Dance off, bro.
It's just been me sitting here for 40 seconds because my computer wouldn't load. Boy, isn't that like some great content for anybody that happened to notice?
It's so dumb.
It's so dumb, it's brilliant.
No! It's just dumb.